There's a lot of ways you can compare DD1 to DD2, and I think one I've never really heard, or at least I haven't heard people talk about, is how DD1 almost forced players to try new team comps because you had to work with resources, and the heroes were that resource. If you didn't want to, afflict your leper or your jester or whoever it was, you would want them to sit out and recover stress for a week. And DD2 doesn't have that. DD2 doesn't make you use specific heroes. You don't pull from, you know, 3 heroes when you're starting your first week in the hamlet. You just have 4 heroes when you start. And obviously with the altar and everything, you unlock them slowly. But with all the different paths and how quickly you can get candles, especially on successful runs, I feel like player experimentation really isn't pushed as much as it is in Darkest Dungeon 1. While it still, wants you to do these things, again, with the altar system and the progression, I understand that that exists. DD1, it was reoccurring. You had heroes that needed to heal quirks, diseases, stress, and all these other things. And it mostly, DD2 at least, mostly relies on players' aptitude or willingness to try new teams, while more cautious players might sit there and use the same team of 4 for multiple runs, and by the time they get through the game with their favorite team, they have all the other heroes unlocked and they don't know who to use. They don't know what to try. It might be overwhelming to some. So I definitely encourage any new players or anybody that's curious on anything in the game to really just go out and try it. Even if you have memories on a hero and you just want to try another path, you're afraid of losing them, you should experiment. Experimenting is the heart and soul of roguelikes, and that's where you're going to find a lot of your enjoyment and a lot of new fun, better understanding the mechanics, so on and so forth, in games like Darkest Dungeon 2. Which leads me to this video. What's going on, people? It's Sun here, or Praises, or Sunny Boy, whatever you're calling me. And in the video I got for you today, I want to go over the team I used on stream recently. It turned out to be a lot of fun and had more synergy than I really expected it to have, especially between Hellion and Jester, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I just want to say that this game has a lot of options, and for myself, I'm over like 150 hours in the game, and there was just things I never really considered using. I barely touched a cultist. To be fair, he was pretty awful, and when they patched him, he's a lot more interesting now, and I've used him a couple times since then. They gave a couple minor buffs to Hellion, but for me, I want to use the old path system before it's gone. I feel like with Flagellant and Vestal, and since Grave Robber got put on this new path system, that, I might as well see, what it has to offer. And I gotta say, when Hellion gets an update to her paths, I really hope Carcass keeps the identity that it has, because it's really unique, and just playing around it in general and playing with the strengths of it turned out to be a lot of fun for this run. I originally started building this team because I wanted to engage with stuns more. I had 2 characters to feed combo in Flagellant and Jester, and then 2 characters to stun, with Yop being able to potentially stun the front 2, and Disorienting Blast on PD to get anywhere from 2, 3, or 4. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. The biggest surprise in terms of synergy definitely came from Hellion and Jester. So going over the paths to kind of make this explanation go a bit smoother, Carcass has a turn start effect where she wins herself, and at the end of the turn, it says here, per winded token, you get a 75% chance for a block token. Everything here is pretty strong in its own right. I mean, starting with winded sucks, but obviously the turn end effect makes it a bit better. You have a chance of lowering stress when you get crit, which is really, really nice for managing her stress, especially with Revelry. And Barbaric Yop giving taunt is actually really nice. You can rotate toe-to-toe and Yop to keep taunt up, and Yop will give 2 weakened on mastery, and will stun on combo with Mastery. So it turns Yop into basically the star of the whole identity behind Carcass, which is good. I mean, it's a good skill. I feel like it kind of deserves that kind of spotlight, right? What I mean when I say I don't want Carcass Hellion to lose her identity, I mean, I like the idea behind her being a low damage but high efficiency tank, and when her path gets reworked, I don't want to see her lose that. But I'm here to say that I feel like Carcass functions as a two-form type build. So, like, what do I mean by that? There is defensive and there is offensive. And this is completely carried by the fact that, you know, these mechanics work in a specific way. And you would need Jester to kind of puppet master this playstyle. But it turned out to be a lot of fun. It's a bit cumbersome. So, I mean, it's not like you're going to do it in every battle. But the potential being there makes it worth it to me. So, for most road fights, you would want to mitigate damage done to your team, put it on Hellion, and just kind of keep her healthy, keep her up. Hellion can't really provide any direct damage with all the winded tokens, so you would need her to put out a lot of bleed damage. I chose bleed out for this, and actually I'll just go ahead and show you my skills. You could stick her in too and use if it bleeds, and I mean that's perfectly fine, like if that's what you want to do. But for me, bleed out seemed to make more sense, especially with Jester and Maniac, because Maniac doesn't really carry if he's in 2 or 3. Jester is going to be hopping between the ranks anyway, and you want Hellion in the front so she can use Yop, she can use toe-to-toe to keep herself stuck. So if you've already noticed looking at my skills, you've probably seen Bloodlust, which is one of the more out there choices for Carcass Hellion because it removes Winded. And trying to play around Winded using Carcass is kind of like shooting yourself in the foot here. Or so you might think, and I'll get into that, like I said. But it turned out to be a lot of fun, and this actually got buffed in the most recent patch with the Occultist changes. Well, I shouldn't say changes, buffs. I mean, they got retooled a little bit, but you know what I mean. Bloodlust turned out to be a lot of fun. And she still has her low health passive, so if you do get her to low health, under 50, you get 25% more damage, and under 25, you get 50% more damage. So that's pretty cool. Like, you could still get some direct damage out of Carcass Hellion just playing with these options. So, going into the synergy between Hellion and Jester, the way that Carcass works is it says turn start, you gain a Winded, right? This has a really unique synergy with Jester's Encore, because Encore gives extra action, and it gives it to him, or it passes his turn to somebody else, basically. So if you give it to Hellion, and she has bleed, the bleed won't proc. Sorry, her turn start effects just don't activate in general. So, you know, dots, the Winded token that she gets, you know, anything like that. If she has a trinket that says on turn start, you know, X thing happens, that won't happen either. This is really unique because if you've stacked 3 Winded, right? She's going last. Winded gives, what is it, like -3 speed or something? Yeah, -3 speed per Winded. So she's basically going last. If you put bleed out on something, if you hit bleed out on something and the bleed sticks, it'll be there for 3 turns, right? If it crits, 5. And you can get like pretty decent crit out of bleed out. I think it's 10%. Yeah, 10% on master. And I had, I think it's called a spiked cap. So if they're bleeding, it's another 15%. So it's like 25% crit. You can give her crit, you know, through any number of means, right? So potentially 5 turns, which is nice because this is a bit of a lengthy process, I guess. Like I said, you're not going to be doing it on every fight, but if you're on a specific layer boss, I fought Leviathan. It'd probably work great on the baby too. You could do it on the general even. Actually, the general would work pretty well because you have, for this team specifically, put Acid Rain on, You get some combat items. You got Plague Grenade. You know, you could make it work on a couple layer bosses. I would not recommend it for the mountain, because the mountain bosses are definitely like a pretty big DPS race a lot of the time. But you could, if you really wanted to. I have 5 memories, so in the clips I have for you today, I didn't go to the mountain with this. I swapped Hellion to Ravager and PD to Alchemist because I just didn't want to lose my heroes, and I just wanted to try the build. So, you know, maybe I'll try it another time, but for this specific video, I didn't. So, going back to Hellion and Jester, hit something with a bleed out. And it's respectable bleed damage at 6 on Master, so that's really nice. You got 3 turns of them bleeding. What ends up happening next is Jester will take his turn. You'll get to your turn as Hellion again, so Jester can kind of do whatever he wants. He can put combo on something, or, you know, what have you. Once it's Hellion's turn, and Encore is off of cooldown, you hit Bloodlust, clears all of your winded. You do 30% more damage to the target you just hit with Bleed Out. Jester's turn comes. You Encore Hellion. Hellion will not get the winded tokens, and then you could hit, hit Bleed Out, right? Or if you wanted, you could run Wicked Hack, but I really, wanted Revelry, and you already need Bleed Out to make this work. So you're basically fighting for, it's a cumbersome set of things because you only get so many skills, so you basically have to either run Hellion in 1 for bleed out or run her in 2 for if it bleeds. And since bleed out had a bigger payout with crit and just raw damage in general, I decided to go with bleed out, but also it wins you. So this is pretty nice because you don't have any stacks of winded when you take your Encore turn. You could potentially hit like a really nasty crit, something like that, get good direct damage. You get your winded token, and when it actually comes to be Hellion's turn again, what ends up happening is you could use something like Yop to taunt and weaken, or toe-to-toe, whatever it is you want to do to give yourself more winded, and then on turn end, you're probably getting most likely 2 block tokens, but you know what I mean. It just has this nice kind of like ebb and flow where you have 2 free turns to do whatever you want with Jester. And then you're basically on like a rotation with Hellion where you're doing like Yop, Bleed Out, Bloodlust, and then Encore with Jester. So it's a nice almost like flowchart, I guess, where you can still get respectable damage out of Carcass Hellion, which is why I'm saying I feel like it's like a mode on, mode off type thing, where mode on is like you're tanking, and then you can turn it off with Encore to get like a really nasty hit in with Bleed Out. And like I said, you could instead of running Bleed Out, you could really honestly run Wicked Hack, and then you could get bleed on the front ranks with like Incision or something if you want. Like you could do that if you really wanted to, and just keep Jester in 4 to start and put PD in 3. But I thought this was a really enjoyable way to play the character. It was a really surprising synergy to find, and I never would have thought about this if I wasn't playing the build and putting myself in these positions where I'm forcing myself to try new ways to play the game. So it turned out to be one of the most interesting teams I've put together. And honestly, like, this team, all I did compared to my normal team was I took Grave Robber off and I put Hellion, and I swapped some of the paths around, which is where a huge strength of Darkest Dungeon 2 lies. Is the path system just makes for a huge amount of team composition ideas, or just a whole myriad of ways to play the game. So I really recommend that you try your best to come up with your own teams and your own unique ways of engaging with the mechanics. And once you play the game a lot and you really try to pay attention to what happens during specific condition, you can get some pretty crazy things out there. This is namely in reference to Encore, because Encore is such a uniquely powerful move where instead of having like a crazy strong healing effect or direct damage. It's honestly just like a very, it's almost like a freeform combo type thing where like if you just had like infinite hit stun on an enemy in a fighting game and you just do whatever and style on them, that's kind of what Encore is in this game, because it just allows you to be creative and, you know, take all kinds of well, I shouldn't say risk, because honestly Encore in general is a really safe move. Like if you need a specific move right now, Jester's normally going first because he's so fast, and you just give it to, you know, whoever. You can give it to PD can go and heal somebody. If PD is low health, you can pass your turn, or, you know, not pass, you can Encore PD and she can heal herself, or you can even pass your turn, honestly, because if they have dots on them and you just really need them off Death's Door and you don't have any battlefield medicine or something, so your Flagellant is like Death's Door with bleeding effects on him and he goes next, you could just pass your turn to Flagellant with Encore, and then he just uses pass and boom, he's fine again because he just passed his turn. Just a really powerful move, but uniquely powerful. I really like Encore. I honestly hope it doesn't go anywhere because it's just like a fun move, and, you know, finding out another way to use Encore is always interesting, but the fact that it enables Carcass Hellion in such a way, I just think it's really cool. And then just kind of going down the list, we have Flagellant next, and this is just the same 5 skills you're going to use most of the time, I feel like, if you're running Maniac. I'm not 100% on, you know, how else or how people run Maniac in different ways. I feel like there's not a whole lot of room to like switch skills out. Maybe that's just me, but personally, whenever I'm playing Flagellant, I don't ever touch Suffer. Necrosis could be good to keep him like healthy. Undying is interesting. I'm sure Undying is a great skill. Honestly, 5 regeneration is pretty good. So, you know, you can kind of play Maniac how you want as long as you have Lash's Gift and Sepsis. But I really like Deathless to help keep the team healthy. I think it synergizes really nicely with More. And you obviously, you know, you probably want Punish. So really you're running Punish, Lash's Gift, and Sepsis, and then the last 2 are up to you. Again, Necrosis is a great move, but there's just not enough Blight synergy to make me feel like it's super warranted. So, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of, you know, it's Maniac Flagellant. If you haven't tried it, you really should. It's a lot of fun. Personally, I still love Scourge. Scourge is my favorite, but Maniac is very unique, and I can see why a lot of people really like it, especially when you look at the synergy that PD and Flagellant have. No matter how you run these two, they almost have like a crazy amount of unique synergy. Even if you're just like running Flagellant with like Exanimate or Wanderer and you got PD, you can like cleave the back line together with both of them. You can hit the front line with just like a lot of damage, a lot of blight damage, I should specify. They're both like more than enough healing you need for your entire team. Flagellant has amazing tanking abilities. They both could be used to cure dots depending on how you're running them. It's just like they have a lot of potential together, regardless of the paths that they're running. Maniac in this team specifically, since Punish has knockback 2 or even knockback 1 unupgraded, but on upgrade, or master I should say, it has combo on it. So basically you just knock back and combo whoever, and then they set up for a disorienting blast. And if they don't get knocked back, you could just use Yop on the next turn. So Punish is a pretty good turn 1 option, but you know, it's just kind of, you know, the situation that you're in, right? Normally the way that the turn 1 would go for this team is you have Jester and he sets up combo. You get to PD's turn and you kind of have to decide what you're doing. I guess turn 1 for Jester could either be Encore or, you know, like Fade to Black or something, because if you need to cleave the back line, you don't really have that with Maniac Flagellant, so you would have to throw 2 Plague Grenades. So you Encore PD, Plague Grenade, and then Plague Grenade again. And then it's up to you, like if you're setting up taunt with Hellion or if you're going to set up taunt with Flagellant, so you kind of have them rotating. Hellion being like a main tank and Flagellant being like an off tank. So he's really flexible in what he can do. The only thing he can't do in 3 is more. So you kind of have to consider that when playing around the positioning restrictions of Flagellant. But yeah, moving on to Jester. Jester is not entirely like unique or anything. The way that I had him was Razor's Wit, Fade to Black, Inspiring Tune, Encore, and Echoing March. And the reason I wanted to try Echoing March is because it keeps whoever I want in the front, which is where most of the damage is, because Bleed Out is a rank 1 ability. Flagellant's only attacking skill for this was Punish, so 1 or 2. Fade to Black can hit, Fade to Black or Razor's Wit, sorry, hits 1, 2, or 3. The only thing I have that can hit 4 is Plague Grenade, and it's not exceptionally strong or anything on Physician because of the -2 to damage over time damage, so it just felt like a natural fit. I wasn't really going to use Slice Off very much anyway, and honestly, I could have put like Play Out or what's the other one, Battle Ballad. Either one of those would have been fine too. I was just more worried about not being able to hit the enemy than not being in position, and since I already had Razor's Wit and Fade to Black toe to toe, I was comfortable enough with my team's positioning that I'd rather have that. You could honestly use something like Solo Finale on here too if you wanted, but moving on to Physician Plague Doctor. The way I ran them was Noxious Blast and Plague Grenade, because even though you lose 2 on your blight effects, I still feel like that this is more worth it to me. You could run Incision over Plague Grenade, I guess, if you wanted to, but it really kind of depends on your trinkets. The extra damage on Incision wasn't super desirable to me because Noxious Blast still has... I have memory on her, so she actually would have 5 normally, but since it's -2 goes to 3, so that's fine. And this is 2, so I don't know, it really depends on you. It also has like a pretty good crit rate on it, I'm noticing, so the extra crit rate might make it worth it to you. Not really anything to deliberate too much over. I guess for this team specifically, you could also say that it helps with like Bloodlust and stuff, but you can't use it from 4. I wasn't super comfortable with that because if I can't hit the rank 1, it's kind of ass, right? I don't know where Jester's going to be because Jester could be up in 2 or something, so it just, for the sake of consistency, yeah, there's probably a little bit more value to get out of Incision, but I was more than comfortable running Disorienting, Noxious, Plague Grenade, Emboldening, and Battlefield Medicine. You could run Indiscriminate Science over Battlefield Medicine, but then you don't really have a super reliable way to cure dots. So make of that what you will. I would say probably the biggest weakness for Physician Plague Doctor is she has a bunch of amazing skills. I didn't even use Ounce of Prevention because it wasn't super appealing to me, and even though it does give 15% stress res, Jester with Virtuoso can pass 100% stress res to somebody on his turn start, so wasn't like I was too worried about it. Plus I already have a lot of stress healing with Revelry and Inspiring Tune. Disorienting Blast giving vulnerable, it can be really nice if you can get it set up for a really strong bleed out. Emboldening Vapors, passing that to Hellion, also pretty cool. For this specific team, I had a lot of Stimulant, so I actually used Stimulants to give herself, to give Hellion, strength. So that was how I did that. But, I mean, Emboldening Vapors isn't bad, especially on upgrade, because you can just feed speed, and there's no cooldown on it. So it can't, I mean, it can be really strong for this team. And like I said, I did have it on. You could swap this one out. I would say that of all of the abilities you have, swapping out Emboldening Vapors for something else is probably the most flexible one. So that's the team I got for you today. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. any of the normal YouTube stuff is super appreciated. If you do end up trying the team, I would love to know how you feel about it, your experiences with it. It's definitely, like I said, it's definitely not the mountain team that you want, but it is a lot of fun in the regions before it, and that's where most of the game is, right? So, you know, if you do, I would love to know. Anyway, that's the video. I appreciate you guys, and stay safe. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.